Hey milk bars and trips to Mars, welcome to another video. What you're about to watch is actually a section of a much larger conversation between myself and my good friend Justin Koo, aka That Christian Vlogger. We both read Francis Chan's latest book, Letters to the Church, and we had a long-form, almost 3-hour discussion on it, half of which is being released on this channel, the other half is being released week by week on his channel. So make sure you go and subscribe to Justin's channel. It's That Christian Vlogger. It is linked below. You're about to watch one section of that conversation. If you want to see the full conversation, that was actually released only to our Patreon supporters. So if you would like to support me, you'd like to support Justin and our ministries on Patreon, you can do that through the link in the description as well. But as for right now, we hope that you enjoy this clip of Letters to the Church, a discussion between myself and Justin Koo, aka That Christian Vlogger.
Justin, we made it.
We did.
The end of a journey, the end of an era. We are here at chapter 10.
It's been a good long journey. For those of you guys who've been watching the videos and have noticed the outfit change, 6 videos into this. We did this over two days. It's a lot of work. Thank you, John, for doing this with me. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of great times. Thank you for
inviting me to do this.
Yeah, man.
It's so good. So the final chapter, which is technically the afterword in the book, is entitled Surviving Arrogance.
Yeah.
And this is a word from Chan right at the end about essentially the right way he feels for us to use this book.
Yeah.
And to use it in a humble way as a guide for change rather than as ammunition. You know, kind of walking into our pastor's office, be like, you need to read this book by Francis Chan and you need to change everything about your church to match this. Francis Chan told me.
I think a lot of people don't realize how that comes across, because everyone who does that always comes from a good heart. No one takes the time to read a book like this, to pray over it, and then go to their pastor who has like a bad heart or a bad motivation behind it. But it's difficult for a lot of people to empathize with the pastor's role. Like, the pastor is someone whose heart is on his or her sleeve, and many times is like, you and I know this from making videos. You never get a video that has 0 dislikes. You never get a video that doesn't have the trolls or the haters on it. And it's even worse when you're out there preaching a sermon, because there's always going to be someone who comes up and says, I disagree, or you're wrong here. And it's super hard not to take that personally, because you pour your heart into everything that you're doing. And so I've worked with a lot of pastors in the past who have just been seriously grieved and like in a negative way impacted from the words of well-meaning church members. And I think this is why Francis Chan is saying, hey, please don't take this book and like hit your pastor over the head with it, because that's not what he's intending.
Well, yeah, and because one of the easiest things to do outside of church and outside of faith is to look at what someone else is doing and nitpick to say how you could have done it better.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to do is to see what someone else is doing, have ways that you feel it could be better, and suggest those in a humble and sort of contrite way.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things to do. The second easiest thing to do, besides just pointing it out, is to just stay silent and not say anything.
And neither of those are good options. Neither of those are what we would want people to take away from this entire series.
Yeah, and this chapter, this afterward for me was especially convicting, as not necessarily from the point of view of the pastor or from the point of view of the leader who is perhaps getting that criticism. It was actually more convicting from the point of view of like, I am that proud, arrogant person.
Totally.
Who I wouldn't walk into my pastor's office, but I would certainly have a conversation with Sweet Bear after the service and tell her all the things that they did wrong.
Or make a whole video about it.
Exactly. I would subtweet the crap out of them.
Yeah.
You know, which is maybe even worse. And
it's
so
not helpful.
The question that I was left with and was wrestling with throughout this whole chapter is, what is that balance? Like, or not balance even necessarily. How do we avoid arrogant, harsh criticism and instead lean more towards a wise rebuke when we see something going on in our churches or in the world or in the lives of another believer? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because that could be something that doesn't have to take place within the Letters to the Church context. That could just be from, hey, I have a brother or a friend that I really care about, and I feel like God is trying to call me to call them to a higher standard of some sort or something like that. So how do we toe that line is definitely the right question. I had a mentor who told me many years ago, Justin, never rebuke someone that you wouldn't be willing to die for. And I thought that was like, whoa, like maybe there's some areas where that's a little too strong of a statement, but the sentiments I totally understood. So many people come with like the rebuking mindset with like the self-righteous, proud, kind of a posture, and that never comes across well. Like if anyone ever approaches you like that, like you have to be a very special breed of person to be willing to take that kind of criticism.
Yeah. And I think like for me, when I have thought about rebuking conversations that I have had, and like I said before, I have that pride and that arrogance, but I am not the one to voice it to the person. Mm-hmm. I'm the one to either hold on to it myself or voice it to someone else. Like I'm a very dangerous person.
And that's not good because especially with someone like you and myself, like if we take that route, there are unfortunately people who will listen to that. And so It's not only something that breeds that in ourselves, but we can actually reproduce that in someone else. And that's a very unhealthy place to be.
Yes. At my best, when that has happened, though, I am very much of the belief that a rebuke, and this is if someone's going to rebuke me, a rebuke best comes when it comes out of relationship.
Yes.
A relationship that has already been established to the point where I know that this person who's speaking to me, they care about me far more than they care about pointing this thing out in me that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be true with the church as well. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like I walk in there my first Sunday and the next week I make a meeting with the pastor and be like, you know what? You didn't fully take into account the historical context of the passage of this last week. No, not at all. I think it's going to fall on humble and accepting ears if it comes from a person that they knows them, knows about them, knows them well enough to know how to rebuke. Yeah. Because there are people in my life where I need to hit them on the head, and there are other people where I need to massage their shoulders while I rebuke. You know what I mean?
Totally. But
that only comes when you actually have a relationship and you understand and care, like you said, willing to die for that person.
Yeah. The New Testament talks really strongly about we should be speaking the truth in love. And I think a lot of popular evangelical culture is, I love them so much that I'm going to tell them how it is. I'm going to warn them sternly because I love them. And there's a certain sense where that's true. But I think that kind of misses the most obvious application of that passage, that as you're speaking the truth, you must love the person. Like actually love them, not just like, oh, I love them so much that I'm willing to tell them that the route that they're going down is terrible and they're going to hell and blah, blah, blah. Like I see so much of that in Christian media and social media type of stuff. It's just, it always frustrates me because that might be a secondary application, but the first one is no, you actually have to love the person that you're rebuking, that you're speaking the truth to. And if you're not loving them, then how do you ever expect them to receive that? And so something that I found, the people that I'm most receptive to are the people that have that depth of a relationship. And so a question I can ask myself is, if I'm trying to take this message or any other message to my church or a person, is, do I have that? And if I don't, maybe the next step that God is calling me to is actually to bite my tongue and to develop a relationship first over the course of weeks and months, and then over time be able to introduce kind of this concept to them.
Yeah, and once you have earned that platform, and when they give you the platform, speak unashamedly. Yes. That's one thing that I still struggle with sometimes is, I'll have a friend in my life who's maybe going down a certain path or they're making choices, and I'm just like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm praying for the opportunity. Yeah. And then when they do give me the opportunity, I still don't speak it.
Oh, no.
Like, that's a problem. Like, they just entrusted me with that. So then I need to prove trustworthy. So let's get maybe a little bit more practical with this now. What are the godly ways for us to incite or bring change within our churches? And maybe this is by starting with a rebuke of some sort. How do we do this practically?
That's a good question. I would say that, since it has to take in the place of the context of a relationship, like being intentional about that. If you only ever see, let's say, your pastor once a week, and that's on the weekends when he or she is preaching on stage, you don't have that yet. And so meeting with them, supporting them, and basically you have to earn their trust and earn the voice in their life. And so find out ways that you can support what that person is doing. If the kind of challenge and the rebuke comes from someone who is actively supporting the mission that the pastor is putting forward, they're going to be way more likely to listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that platform is earned by your example and by what you live. Mm-hmm. When you show, like, are you showing up to that church once a week on a Sunday, and you sneak in 5 minutes late after the first worship song is over,
right,
and you leave right after it ends, and you don't really say hi to anyone, you're not getting involved, you're not putting in that effort, guess what? You're not doing anything to earn that platform. Or
just being a church member and attending is nothing. Like, that means nothing to the relational component.
Exactly. And then also, as you then are getting yourself more engaged, I think also a big part of it is asking yourself, like, before I rebuke the pastors or the staff for how they're not meeting this need, what can I do?
Yes.
Even before it's being talked about.
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely what Jesus was talking about. He says, before you point out the speck in someone's eye, check for the log in your own. Yep. And that wasn't given from a desire for you to just shut up and never say your piece. But the whole passage says, after you've taken care of the log in your eye, then you can go and tell your brother or sister what's going on. And so that self-examination is only the first step. The second step is then to go and actually share what God has convicted you to share. Something that I would say it also really makes it much more effective is, rather than telling them something, ask them a question instead. Questions are so much more disarming and personable, rather than like you just coming down and preaching on them.
Yes, I have a perfect example of this that is a silly little thing. However, I learned the importance of asking it as a question. So my pastor's names are Jarrett and Jeannie Stevens.
Okay.
Not Jared and Janine, Jarrett with a T and Jeannie. So when they get up there every Sunday and they're preaching, they say, "Hey, how y'all doing? My name's Jarrett, my name's Jeannie," or whatever it is. And they don't show their names. You know, sometimes you go to church and like on the screen behind them, it shows their name, maybe their like Instagram handle. They don't do that. And so there are people who will go to our church for months thinking that our pastors' names are Jared or Janine or whatever it is. And I thought that was strange. And so I went to our creative producer and I was like, "Hey, instead of saying you should show their names because no one knows who they are," I said, "Hey, is there a reason why you don't put like the speaker's name up on the screen as they come up?" And sure enough, that was a decision they made a while ago for a very specific reason.
Interesting.
But they already were thinking about adding that back in.
Yeah.
And I was able to speak into it and say, "Hey, I think it might actually be helpful if you guys did."
Yeah. Yeah. Super simple.
I'm glad I said it as a question, because chances are the thing that you are seeing and wanting to incite change in your church, that's something the staff is already thinking about. They just have about 16 billion other things that they're also thinking and praying on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another really simple, but I think effective tip when it comes to this. Just do this. Start off the conversation by saying, after you've developed the relationship, of course, but start off the conversation by saying, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And then like actually waiting for the response.
Yeah.
That simple thing where they have the opportunity to give you permission to speak into their life, I think it actually makes a big difference in the conversational dynamic.
Yeah, or even if it's not that, like I'll go up to our tech director all the time and be like, "Hey, can I be the annoying church member who gives you a suggestion after a service?" And he knows he can say no, no, or like, "Hey, shoot me a text," or whatever it is. He knows that that's okay. But I've only done that after I have developed a relationship with Laz, and we know one another, and he knows I'm not just this random person coming up to him.
And they might even just like totally throw it back at you, like, "Yeah, you can, like you are the annoying person," but like it's disarming, and that's okay. And they can kind of mentally prepare themselves for whatever conversation's about to take place.
Absolutely. And I think sort of this whole conversation and this whole book then as we've been armed with this knowledge of perhaps God's original design for the church, what can we do with it is we can treat it as not as ammunition, like we talked about at the beginning of this, but as knowledge that we want to speak into the church with humility and with patience and with care. And I think that's sort of been my big takeaway. And my biggest takeaway has been, and not just keeping silent about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sweet.
Sweet, man. Thanks for doing these.
Absolutely. This has been a blast.
Well, maybe we'll do more.
Maybe. If we don't get destroyed for this kind of conversational tone and patient approach, because sometimes people just want you to just like tell it like it is, but like sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes you just got to work through it, do the hard work.
We have nuance. There's nuance in these conversations. Not everyone's willing to go as deep as us.
Yeah. Well, hey, bro. Appreciate it all. Love you. And
Love you
praying
all,
for you, man. Keep it up.
You too.
Cool.
Coolio.
Hey friends, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this discussion, once again, head on over to Justin's channel, That Christian Vlogger. You'll find all of the odd chapter discussions on his channel. You'll find all the even chapter discussions right here. If you want to watch it all uninterrupted, you can just become a supporter of both of our Patreon pages. It is a great way for you to support the ministry that we are doing, help these ministries continue to grow, and you get to watch our whole almost 3-hour discussion of the book. You can watch that completely unedited, all put together. In the meantime, thank you all once again for watching. We'll see you next time on another video. I love you all. Keep being awesome.